It is with great pleasure that I get to introduce a person I consider a friend, a person who I think embodies what we're looking for in governance, a person I think many of you know well, but if you don't know him well, you're going to get to know him a little bit here today. But Jim Jordan is someone who I've never seen compromise on his values. I've never seen him basically do something because it was politically correct or because someone was leaning on him. He's always there listening to us. He's always there to give us the information about why he's doing what he's doing. And he's a true champion of liberty. Please welcome Congressman Jim Jordan.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah. You're all probably familiar with the old story when the Israelites were camped against the Philistines, and each day the Philistine giant would walk out and issue the challenge, who will fight Goliath? The Israelites' response was, he's so big we can never defeat him. But David's response was, he's so big I can't miss. And that's the attitude. That's the attitude that you all have. That's certainly the attitude that Tom Z has. And that's why I appreciate you so much. I learned a long time ago, and the other times I've been able to speak to some of you and visit with you, I say this every single time. Good things don't just happen. If you want to accomplish anything of meaning, anything of significance, you want to attain anything of real lasting value and importance, it takes a willingness to get off the sidelines and get in the game. And you're all doing that. And when you do that, you assume the risk, you take the heat, you take the cheap shots from the left, you get called all kinds of names, and I have the utmost respect for your willingness to do just that, to step off the sidelines, get in the game, and make a difference. So thank you very much for what you're doing. It is so appreciated. And thank you for the folks you're putting on Central Committee and State Central Committee, and folks you put into the State House, like my good friend Ron Hood. Ron is a great American who is fighting the good fight. And for those of you who are from his state representative district, thank you for sending him to the State House to fight the good fight. This is Ron's second go-around, or third go-around. I forget how many times. Third, yeah. We served together back in the mid-'90s in the State House, and those were times that I'll always remember. I think, it's interesting. I was thinking about we the people, which starts our documents. It's the first words we hear in the documents that founded this country. And you think about it, and I forget who I heard say this, but it made so much sense to me. The country closest to us, where we sort of came from in our traditions and our history and our form of government, Great Britain, they were a top-down model. I think it's always important to remember this. There it was, God gave power to the king, to the queen, to the monarch, and they gave eventually over time power to the nobles, and then it was the landowners, and then it was down to the merchants, and then finally the people, the commoners, got power and rights and privileges as well. But when we started this experiment in freedom, America, we said we're not going to do it that way. In fact, we're going to go just the opposite. We're not going to be a top-down model. We're going to be a bottom-up model. America's always been the grassroots country. And we said here in America, we don't get power and rights and liberties from the king, the queen. We get them from God in the fact that we were created in his image. And we, the people, loan power to government, not because they give us rights. We loan power to government to protect the rights we have by the fact we were created in God's image. And it's a fundamental different concept. No other nation in history has ever started on that principle. And so when you have the title, We the People, it is more than appropriate. It's exactly what this country is about. And I so appreciate that. I'm just going to make a few comments, and then I'll let you, if it's okay with Tom or who's going to ever run this particular session, I'll let you ask any question you want. I tell every single audience I speak to, you can ask any question you want. You can yell at me. You all pay my salary, and that's. We still have this wonderful thing called the First Amendment, and you're going to get a chance to exercise that here in just a few minutes. But I think we're at one of those moments of real importance. Sometimes in your individual life, there are moments of magnitude, moments of real significance. I mean, I think about, I'll never forget the day my wife and I were married. We have 4 children. I'll remember the days they were born. I remember some of the big goals that they had as students and as student athletes, and when they accomplished it, our boys wrestle. There's matches that they've competed in that I will remember until I die. So there are moments you never forget. We just had our second granddaughter just 3 weeks ago. I remember getting the call. There's moments you never forget. Well, sometimes those moments of significance, moments of real magnitude, moments of real importance apply in a broader context. And I would argue we're at one of those critical times in American history where we're going to have to realize there are some big things at stake. And fundamentally, one of the keys is, and it's why you're so active in what you're doing, one of the big keys is the attack on freedom. The simple attack on the fundamental liberties we cherish as Americans, those fundamental liberties that make America the special place, the greatest nation that's ever been. And you think about it. Your First Amendment liberties are under attack, right? I mean, thank goodness for the Hobby Lobby decision. But it was only 5-4. It was only 5-4. So your religious liberties are under attack. Your Second Amendment rights by this administration have been attacked time and time again. Your Fourth Amendment right to unreasonable search and seizure is being questioned right now. You think about what we've learned relative to the whole issue of privacy and what goes on. So fundamental liberty is under assault. And frankly, one other thing that I think is important, and I'll come back to this to the freedom and liberty issues in just a second. But this week, with what we've been dealing in Washington, one of the things I think is important, one big concern I have is the leadership role that America should play in the world is now being questioned. Polly and I, we've had the opportunity to travel to the state of Israel 3 different times over the last 6 years. And each time you go there, it's fascinating. You hear this. Doesn't matter if you're talking with people in the private sector, people in the government. They will all say the same thing. They'll say the best way, the absolute best way your country can help our country, the best way America can help Israel, the absolute best way you can help us is for America to stay strong. If you're strong, we are better. If you're strong, we are safer. And the truth is, then this is what the left always misses, and frankly, I think this is what this president misses. The world's a scary, dangerous place, right? I mean, just watch the news any hour of the day, particularly of late, all the things going on. It's a scary, dangerous place, but it's less scary, less dangerous when America leads. With the traditions we have, our commitment to fundamental liberties, the world's a better place when we lead. And the truth is, you cannot lead militarily, you cannot lead diplomatically if you first don't lead economically. Just the way it works. You want to be the world's military superpower, you better be the world's economic superpower. They're just related. And you cannot lead economically if you're not embracing those values that make your country special in the first place, the values that the founders understood and started this country on. And we were traveling. The guy who got this, Mr. Viggory, was talking about those values and the kind of leadership and primaries, and it made me think of a guy who actually challenged a sitting president in a primary one time and lost, but then came back 4 years later and won. And we were, and it was at a moment when we needed real leadership, at a moment that was pretty important. Polly and I were traveling over Easter. We have a daughter who goes to school in Iowa, in Iowa City. We have a son who goes to school in University of Wisconsin. I hesitate to say that in this town, but that's the fact. And then our oldest son was at the time working in Chicago. So over Easter weekend, we were driving that triangle from Madison, Iowa City, Chicago, and we were driving from Iowa City to Chicago, from leaving where Jesse was to go see Benjamin. And as we're driving along, just Polly and I, and she's driving, and I'm kind of in the passenger seat, sort of half asleep, and we're going across Route 88 across Illinois. And there's this sign that says, Dixon, Illinois, hometown of Ronald Reagan, right? And Polly sees this sign, and she just whips the car off the road and sort of wakes me up. And I said, "What are you doing?" She says, "We're going to see Reagan's hometown. We're going to see where he was raised." And you pull in this little town, 15,000 people, and you got an appreciation for why Ronald Reagan, at that later at that time when it counted, that moment of real significance was the president that he turned out to be and the leader that he turned out to be. A little town, you come in on the main road, and his house was one road south of the main drag. And it is such a modest little white house sitting up on a hill. We parked the car. We walked up, two little old ladies with the Historical Society. You paid them $5, and they gave you a tour, showed you a video, and you understood what made Ronald Reagan the special man that he was, and the leader this country needed at that moment of real significance. And that's where we're at today. And with your work, and as Richard said, 2016, we're going to have to make sure we win. We elect the right kind of guy who embraces those conservative principles, who can communicate in that optimistic, who has that David attitude, says no matter what, we can get it done. That was Reagan. He was a conservative who said, you know what? Why shouldn't we be happy? We got the truth on our side. Mike Pence, a friend of mine, governor in Indiana, who may in fact be that guy. There's going to be lots of good candidates we have who are going to run in the primary, and I feel confident that we're going to have the right candidate and that we're going to win. But Mike Pence over in Indiana has a great line. He says, "I'm a conservative and I'm not mad about it." Right? And that's exactly right. We got the truth on our side. We should never forget that. And again, here's why it's so important: that you have the right kind of attitude. You communicate in a compelling and optimistic way, like Reagan did. And it's so critical that we do all this because, as I said before, freedom is under attack. First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment. And the one area, and I'll spend a little time on this and then we'll take your questions. The one area that I focused on where the attack on freedom is so egregious has been the IRS. I mean, think about it. Your First Amendment liberties, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of association, freedom of assembly, but your most fundamental right is your ability to speak. And specifically, when the founders thought about the First Amendment, they were thinking about your ability to speak in a political fashion, in a political nature, against the policies of your government. And that's what was systematically targeted, people systematically harassed by the Internal Revenue Service of all agencies. So this is as fundamental and basic as it gets. And so when we discovered this, and it came from folks like you, truly was. It was Ohio conservative Tea Party groups who came to us and said, hey, we're getting the runaround. We're getting asked all kinds of ridiculous questions. We applied for our tax-exempt status. We can't get an answer. On and on it goes. And so we started inquiring. And this week we put together a list, staff, and we had another hearing with Mr. Koskinen this week, which was always an interesting experience. But we put together a list of all the things, when this story finally broke, and we discovered, yes, in fact, the IRS was targeting citizens for exercising their most fundamental First Amendment rights. We put together a list. I was jotting these down again as I came over this morning. All the misstatements that the IRS has made since this thing went public. I mean, think about this. Remember when Doug Shulman, this is even before the scandal broke, Doug Shulman, then commissioner, was asked if any targeting was taking place. This was in the Ways and Means Committee hearing. He said, I can give you assurances no targeting is taking place. Not true. I asked Mr. Shulman when the story did break, when we had him as a witness early on in this investigation, I asked him, how many times did you go to the White House? Remember this? Yeah, he went 157 times. His answer was, I don't know, but I did go once for the Easter egg roll. Remember that? Are you kidding me? We asked Ms. Lerner. We actually brought Lois Lerner in to talk with our personal staff and committee staff clear back in 2012, February 2012. And we said, hey, we're hearing from folks across our district, across the state of Ohio, and frankly around the country, who say you guys are giving them all kinds of harassment and mistreatment. We said, what's the beef here? And her response was, this is the normal back and forth in the exempt determinations process. Total lie. Ms. Lerner, when she broke the story, now remember, Inspector General does their investigation. They give a draft copy to the IRS, so the IRS knows what's coming. And they know that on May 13th, when the Inspector General is going to release his report. So what do they decide to do? The IRS, in conjunction with the Treasury, says we're going to try to get ahead of the story. So Lois Lerner goes to a Bar Association speech in Washington and has a friend ask a planted question. And what does she say? She blames it on 2 good public employees in Cincinnati, right? She says rogue agents in Cincinnati. It was employees in Cincinnati. It wasn't us, it wasn't Washington. Turned out to be a lie. Jay Carney repeated that. Remember this? Jay Carney says, oh, it's just some folks in Cincinnati, had nothing to do with Washington. The president said, to continue the false narrative, said it was boneheaded decisions by employees in Cincinnati. Remember this? And then his now famous statement, there's no corruption, not even a smidgen, right? Mr. Koskinen, moving to the current commissioner, Mr. Koskinen. A few months ago, we learned that Shazam, we've lost the emails, right? Remember? So we brought Mr. Koskinen, and I went after him hard because here were the facts that we discovered through all kinds of different means, some through deposition, some through the good work of Judicial Watch, doing their FOIA requests and going to a judge. I mean, that's been invaluable in this investigation. John Koskinen's chief counsel knew in February of this year that they had lost, that Ms. Lerner's hard drive had crashed and there were problems. He knew in April, and when did he tell Congress? More importantly, when did he tell the American people? June 13th. Now, private citizens being investigated by the FBI and the Justice Department, and you lose critical documents and you wait 2 months to tell the Justice Department? You think you're okay doing that? No way, but somehow the IRS thinks that's okay. When I questioned Mr. Koskinen, I said, why'd you wait 2 months? You know, at some point, when does it become obstruction of justice? You're not sharing pertinent information. Did you tell the Inspector General? No. Did you tell the Justice Department? No. Did you tell the Congress? No. He waited 2 months to tell us after he knew. After his chief counsel knew 4 months before that. Frankly, I'm convinced they were never going to tell us. I actually raised this in a hearing. And this is where Judicial Watch helped us out tremendously. Remember that Easter weekend, Judicial Watch, through their FOIA action, had got some emails between Justice Department and the IRS, between Mr. Richard Pilger, a lawyer at Justice Department, and Lois Lerner. And they made those public, and we said, wow, that's interesting. Mr. Pilger, we'd like to talk to you. So we brought him in for a deposition, the Oversight Committee. In the course of that interview, we discovered that Mr. Pilger was not only talking with Lois Lerner in 2013, he was talking with her in 2010. So we then go back to the Justice Department, and we subpoena the Justice Department. We say, we want all communications between the Justice Department and the IRS, specifically between Ms. Pilger and Lerner, or anyone else at the Justice Department and Lois Lerner. We get, a few weeks later, a bunch of emails that go clear back to 2010, these emails. And so we get those, and then we go back to the IRS with a letter on June 9th. And we say to the IRS, now listen, we've had a subpoena with you guys for over a year. We just subpoenaed Justice Department a few weeks ago, and we got these emails. How come you didn't give us these emails? And suddenly the IRS understands what? They didn't give them to us because they don't have them. They lost them. And now they got to come clean because they've been caught. And so John Koskinen's chief counsel knows in February. He knows in mid-April. He doesn't tell Congress till June 13th. Well, what happened that caused him to tell us on June 13th? June 9th when we sent that letter saying, why didn't you give us those emails? And, of course, Mr. Koskinen denies, no, we were doing our due diligence. We just wanted to make sure. But I tell you what, one thing I've learned in these investigations is follow the timeline. And what significant event happens right before is important. So I don't know if they're ever going to tell us. And then Mr. Koskinen tells us, just to round out the top 10 misstatements by the IRS, Mr. Koskinen tells us that he can confirm there are no backup tapes for Ms. Lerner's emails. Turned out not to be true either. So we continue to dig. Here's some good news. Well, good news, bad news in this story. The good news is 26 Democrats voted with every single Republican in the House of Representatives to call for a special prosecutor. And when 26 Democrats go against their Attorney General, against their administration, that tells you how bad this is. And we know how bad this criminal investigation is from the Justice Department, because on January 13th of this year, the FBI leaked to the Wall Street Journal no one was going to be prosecuted. Talking about sending a message to Lois Lerner that she can go ahead and keep quiet, and she's not going to face any, ramifications, not going to have any real consequences. The president prejudges the entire case when he made his famous comment, which we talked about earlier. There's no corruption, not even a smidgen. And the lead attorney from the Justice Department on the case, Barbara Bosserman, gave $6,750, a max-out contributor to the president's campaign and the DNC. And we're supposed to believe it's a fair investigation. So at least every single Republican gets that, but 26 Democrats get it as well. Here's the end. We're going to keep pushing, because you have to. You have to. When it's as basic as your free speech rights under the First Amendment, you have to get to the truth. And we're going to do every single thing we can, and hopefully at some point the U.S. Attorney will take the contempt resolution to a grand jury, and we'll get Ms. Lerner in front of a judge. That's where we can actually get some real answers. When a judge tells Ms. Lerner, look, you either talk to the Congress or you're facing jail. And it's amazing in life how jail has a way of helping people find Jesus, if you know what I mean. So we need to do that, and that's what we're going to continue to push on. I'll go to your questions here. Let me just do one quick thing before I do. And I share this story everywhere I go now, and it happened a couple years ago. But it's I think it captures the attitude you all have, the attitude Ronald Reagan had, the attitude this country's traditionally brought to bear, no matter what the challenge, no matter what the obstacle, no matter what the hurdle was in front of us. But Polly and I had a opportunity. This is a couple summers ago. We had some friends in the Dayton area, and they said they wanted us to come down and go to dinner with them, and we said, yeah, we will. We had the evening open, and they said, but before we go to dinner, we're going to tour the Wright brothers' home, and we said, yeah, we'd love that kind of stuff. We love the historical buildings. The house we live in, we've been there almost 20 years, is built in 1837, so we like that kind of thing. And we said, yeah, we'll do that. So we go down and we tour the home there in the Oakwood, Dayton area, and you're going through, and it's neat, the historical side, and you learn all kinds of neat things about the Wright brothers and the amazing individuals and entrepreneurs and inventors that they were. The last room on the tour, it's a bedroom of one of the brothers. I can't remember which one, but you're there and you've learned all these neat things. But the last room, they show you two pictures. And this has just stuck with me, and I share it at just about every speech I give. They show you two pictures. The first one is that first flight, 1903 in Kitty Hawk. They hold it up, and it's a plane. It's, they called it a plane. It looked like some contraption that, worked like an airplane. They show you that picture, and it takes you back. You think, oh, I remember that from junior high history, high school history class, whenever you learn that. And they say that, this plane flew 101 feet, Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. They put that picture down. The next picture they hold up, 44 years later, 1947, Chuck Yeager breaking the sound barrier. And I thought, wow, that from two guys flying on this contraption they call it a plane, 100 feet, 44 years later, another American breaking the sound barrier. And they put that down, and that's the end of the tour, literally the end of the tour. And we're walking out, and literally, as I'm walking through the door, walking out of that bed, it hit me. Well, why in the heck did they stop there? They should have showed you a third picture. After all, this is Ohio, right? They should have showed you a third picture. Particularly me, I represent Wapakoneta and New Knoxville, Ohio, right? So why didn't they show us the third picture, 1969, Neil Armstrong stepping on the moon? Another Ohioan. So you think about this country, the people in this country, from 1903 flying 101 feet to 1969, 66 years later, putting a man on the moon. So don't tell me America can't rise to the occasion. No matter what goofy thing Barack Obama does, we can overcome it. We've done it time and time again. There is an attitude that exists in this country that I think is probably best captured by my favorite scripture verse, 2 Timothy 4:7. Paul writes to Timothy. Paul, it's like the older guy giving advice to the young guy, and he says, I've fought the good fight, I've finished the course, I've kept the faith. And that is our charge every single day as Americans. Fight, finish, and keep. Fight the fight that's in front of us. Do it in a way that we have a smile on our face like Reagan did. But understand that if you fight and you finish and you keep those principles, keep faith in those principles that made us great in the first place, we'll be just fine. We've proven it time and time again. You'll understand that. That's why you're having such an impact. You're bringing the energy to the political process today. And we so appreciate that. So God bless you and keep up the great work. Okay, we'll do 5 minutes.
he is going to actually take a few questions, even though I was supposed to get him out of here. So he's a couple of questions. Let's see. I'll come in the middle here, and somebody can can go. Let's see here. Nelson, why don't you do this? Start us off, Nelson.
Well, mine's a request rather than a question. I want you to use your influence with the Republicans to not send a man to do a woman's job. The Democrats will be running Hillary as the first woman president. We've got a conservative, a woman, and a Hispanic, Susana Martinez.
Yeah, heard her speaking.
And I think that that would be a good way for the Republicans to go.
All right. Who else has got a question here? Carol, you can do it.
Have the Republicans started developing a contingency plan for if Obama signs that executive order about the children?
Immigration,
that
yeah.
they'll have some kind of way to fight it?
Yeah, one of the things I am a little concerned about is this lame duck session could be pretty intense. You now have the Syria resolution, which was dealt with this past week, comes due on December 11th. The bill that funds the government comes due on December 11th. There's the, quote, doc fix, which is always an important matter. There's tax extenders, certain things in the tax code that come due. There's the internet tax freedom, which comes due. And then of course, and I'm forgetting a couple others, I'm sure, trade authority issue that comes due. And then there's what the president may do on immigration. So typically, lame duck sessions, not a whole lot of good things get done. I'm always nervous about them. In fact, a few years ago, we conservatives, Jim DeMint and I and some others worked on trying to make sure we pushed the bill that funds the government, the CR, the continuing resolution. We made sure we pushed it into the new Congress so we wouldn't be dealing with it in a lame duck session. But that's not the case this time. So I'm watching that issue and a host of others that are going to come due in December. Maybe one of those. It seems we do this way too often in Congress, where we're there on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve and all kinds of slugging it out. So stay tuned. But yeah,
right.
I'm watching that issue and a host of others.
All right, last question. One last question. He's got to get going. Here we go.
First, it's an honor to be in your presence, sir. I think you're one of the better people that we've had.
Pleasure's mine. Pleasure's mine. Thank you.
Secondly, a comment on our currency, as well as in the third verse of the national anthem, it says, "In God we trust," or something to that effect. I think that's what we need to take ourselves back to. The other aspect is that one gentleman who went to the Easter egg hunt or roll or whatever it was, and we knew that he had 157 appearances at White House. Could we put? I think we need to have our ducks in a row and put their feet to the fire and get it on record, because they are manipulative. They live by their own set of values, and they are not Christian values.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We tried to do that in the hearing this week. We tried to go back through and highlight. I just jotted some of them down. We highlighted all the things that we call them misstatements by the IRS, and we just went with 10 or 12 of them that we could readily point to try to draw attention to and hold people accountable. Your first point is exactly right. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All are created equal, endowed by our Creator and with certain inalienable. I mean, the document that started it all understood that faith is central to the American experience and central to who we are as a people, a culture, and a country. And if we lose that, it is just not. It's just not good. So I could not agree more, and it's something that we have to focus on. Faith, the institution of the family, this concept of freedom, those are the ideals that make America the great nation that she is. And again, all of you get that. That's why you're involved. That's why you're willing to step in and make a difference and do what Americans have been doing for generations and generations. And so God bless you and keep it up.
Congressman Jim Jordan, one of the best we've got. All right.